I feel like Yeehaw doesn't really give Brandon Sanderson, but sure, sure. Hello, and welcome to another Writer's Chat. It's been a hot minute since before the summer,
Yeah.
and I'll probably be a hot minute until another one. I just wanted to specifically do this writing lecture, specifically with Malin, at
Yes.
this specific moment in time, which is why we're here today with a little, what's it called when a band come encore? When a band comes back for like a few last songs at the end of a show?
I would have called it an encore, so I don't know.
Yeah, an encore. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think this is like a writer's chat encore with also not a book.
Which
As it
is a French
says,
word that just means again. That's literally all it means.
there
Encore.
you go,
And
encore,
again.
again. Uh, and again, we are here talking about craft, specifically the craft of writing, specifically in our case, books, but you can also write poetry and lots of other things. Today, we're talking about not a writer book, which has historically been what we've been talking about earlier. We've been talking about the Brandon Sanderson writing lectures, specifically the 2025 editions.
Yes.
There is a playlist for a 2020 edition, which I think I watched
Did you?
probably. Yeah, I think I watched it as it happened because he published it according to the semester or something. I forget. I've watched
Didn't
a
I
huge
didn't watch
chunk
it,
of
so I
it.
can't compare them, but I've heard some people say to me that the first version he yaps a little bit less in it, so it might be better. But I've only watched the newest one because I have a problem in my mind, which is I only can watch things that are recent, and if it's old, I don't want to watch it when it comes to YouTube.
Oh no! Well, I watched this when it was new on YouTube, so
Yeah.
um,
So
I don't remember specifically the yap to academic material in the
mm,
2020 lecture. I will say this 2020, just diving straight into it, we're gonna introduce ourselves momentarily. Hold on, to our audience of one, which is Wendy, Illy. Um, I will say that this lecture feels like, you know how you watch a show sometimes and it's a prequel, a sequel, or like a, what's it called, side show, like backstory show,
like a
like
spin-off.
a spin-off. Yeah, this feels like a spin-off to the Brandon Sanderson mythos, and I think you can watch it as you can watch a spin-off, not having watched the source material. But I think there's a lot of Easter eggs and a lot of references you'll get if you're a Brandon Sanderson stan,
I
which I am
think
not.
it's like you would get it as like the cherry on top, but I haven't read a single one of his books. Not because I don't want to, but every single time I want to, I'm like, this just isn't really exactly for me. And so I've never read them. And I have friends who are huge fans of his books and have never watched his videos. I think it's still like, I know we'll get into
Yeah.
it at the end when you're like, who's this video for? Who's this course for? And I'll be like, anyone who wants to write. It doesn't matter if you're not a fan of Brandon.
Yes, academically, really a strong class. Just generally, I loved it.
Yeah.
But I think, as you say, there's an amount of Easter eggs and like cherries on top that I think if you're a fan of Brandon Sanderson, his works, like the persona that he is, I think this will be such an enjoyable. There were so many
Yeah.
comments on the YouTube videos be like, I don't write books, I just like listening to this, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is the perfect show for
You would
you.
enjoy it extra. And also, you can still enjoy some of the references without having read his work if you know of his work,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I
yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like I've not read his work, but I know the reference to some of the stuff he's talking about. Like I know what the Way of Kings is, and things like that. So I still
I've read
get the references
Mistborn,
without.
so
Yeah,
that's my reference point. But okay, just reeling back in the little review part, we're gonna introduce ourselves. My name is Stieg. Hello, I'm here every Tuesday, most Tuesdays, not every Tuesday. I canceled last Tuesday, or was it the previous one?
some
But I'm
Tuesdays.
here most Tuesdays. I'd say 80% of Tuesdays in a year. I'm probably here.
Nice.
With usually Malin, who's here 60% of the Tuesdays, I'd
That is
say.
true.
And I'm obsessed with it. I love scheduling hangouts. It's like scheduling play dates for your kids, except I'm the child and you're also the child. And I'm obsessed.
I love
With
it.
me today, I have the lovely Malin. Hello. Malin, you're the one to thank for this thing happening because I wasn't going to watch it originally, but then I couldn't help myself.
I love
So
a craft chat. I just really enjoy those because I feel like they push me forward as a writer.
really feel like I really dive into the material when I know that, oh, me and Malin are talking about this in a month. I better
Yes.
lock in.
I mean, sneak peek or what, but like when you say diving into the material, I just know that I take so many notes about things. I'm like, here's,
Oh my
here's all
God,
of
that is
my
so gorgeous.
here's all of my yeah, yeah. Like even the Q&As, I took some notes. Yeah.
Yeah. I I watched the Q&As, a couple of them, but I didn't take much notes unless it was a really particular.
I tried to pay attention to some that I was like, that's more. There were some questions I was like, I don't think I care about that question or that it'll ever be relevant to me. And so I didn't take notes of them. But some of them I would take notes. So like, for instance, the very last one was mostly just a Q&A. And I think I took notes of the questions I cared about and then highlighted the ones I extra cared about. And then that was it. So
Gorgeous, stunning diva. I will say a lot of the questions felt like dude bros stroking themselves in front of a camera. I will say.
I had that exact same thought as you, where I had like a flashback of being in university and being like, do you remember back in the day caring so much more about like asking a good question and like caring if the teacher, especially if it was a good teacher that everyone liked, was like, great question. You'd be like, yes, I know. It is like that was more important than the actual answer to the question. So
Yeah, I just and a lot of them was just like it was just on and on. I'm like, if you're going to ask a question for an online lecture to Brandon Sanderson, you better make it short. Make it a smart question.
but it felt more like I want to be heard on camera and be heard to ask something clever rather than something
Yeah.
you actually want to know. Well, the questions in between, like the little web
Oh, the
sessions,
selected questions were really good. I like
these
those.
were real questions. These were people who were like, I really want to know this. Please, can you develop this?
Yes, I like the Q&A sessions a lot
Yeah.
more than I like the in-game at the lecture Q&As because they were
Yeah.
just like felt like guys stroking themselves.
Agreed.
But sure. We're gonna also relate a little bit back and say hello to some people. As Wendy, hello. Close personal friend of the channel, welcome. I watched the 2020 edition at some point and took lots of notes that are now who knows where. That's why you take notes on Notion, because then they're just on the internet.
I
And
don't
if the
have to
internet
say
goes down, you don't need the notes. I'll tell you that much for free. Eva
Although
is here. Hello.
Notion's now offline as well. Like they've started being, you can be offline with them now, which is
Ooh,
good.
love that.
It's like one of the newest feature that they
I
this
never
year.
read the updates. I'm just like, yeah, sure, close. I'll figure this out if I need it. I take notes, but I'm not that good at organizing them. After Notion, my notes have exponentially improved, I will say. I love color coding, making little arrows and symbols and organizing and lines. It's very
Yeah.
cute. Speaking of very cute, as I said, we're talking about the Brandon Sanderson's writing lecture, the 2025 edition. And for anyone who doesn't know, which was I knew of him, but I didn't know about him. So I did a little sleuthing, as I always do when I do these things. Brandon Wynne Sanderson is his full name. He writes fantasy, sci-fi, and young adult superhero novels and fantasy novels. Um, Mostly known for, I guess, the Cosmere stuff like
Mm.
Elantris, Mistborn, all that jazz, and his Stormlight Archive series, and also known for finishing the Wheel of Time series after Robert Jordan's passing, and according to the reviews, doing so flawlessly. So that was not easy shoes to fill, but I think he filled them.
Yeah. I think it
Um,
helps that he knew Jordan and that he was
Probably, and had
yeah.
like extensive conversations and notes and etc. and so
Yeah.
on and so forth. His books have sold 45 million copies globally and have appeared in the New York Times bestseller list numerous times. His novella *The Emperor's Soul* won the Hugo Award, which is a science fiction award given to like the most best. I think this is like a voted by the members of the community the previous year. So like
Really
one of his books
prestigious. Yeah. If
or
you're
novellas, I guess.
if you're an SFF author, it's the one to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he won that for his novella, *The Emperor's Soul*. He raised over $42 million through a crowdfunding campaign for books written during the quarantine, which I believe was 4 books, which is a crazy amount of dollars to raise for books for a writer.
I think he holds a few records on Kickstarter for like how quickly as well he raised the money and things like that. And everyone talked about it at the time because he's a big disruptor of the publishing industry, which we love
which
to
I
see.
love.
Sucks.
Yeah, eat the publishers, I guess. Which
Yes.
I also, because this lecture and the 2025 lecture, like nope, the 2020 lecture and this 2025 lecture, like it is an immense source of knowledge if you watch it. Like it is a college course on writing, and it's like not one of those
And it's free.
washy creative writing courses. It's like
Yeah.
very hands-on, very applicable. Very there's a lot of information to gain for
Yeah.
a writer and a reader, I guess. And it's all for free on God's internet, which I think is such a cool thing to do. I mean, yes, you also crowdfund $42 million from the same community, so it's nice that you give back in some sense, and I think this absolutely gives back. Is it $42 million worth of information? I don't think so, but it is really, 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 really solid.
Yeah.
And I think that's just really well done. I think he's a very good, just generally as a tutor, guidance counselor, not guidance counselor. He's not. Is he a teacher? I think he's a teacher at the school. Maybe like
Yeah.
as a teacher, he's
Yeah.
very he's very like he's very good at conveying the things he wants to convey about writing. I
He's
found.
also really good at picking up quickly what people are asking when they're asking questions, because some of the questions like stump me and I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
He picks it up really quickly about what they're he always has good examples to give to convey an answer, which I find is a good skill to have and not an easy one to have. So he
yeah.
seems
I
to be
will
a
say
good
he
teacher.
uses a lot of movie example, which is my gripe with a lot of craft books.
Yes.
But he does also reference a lot of novels, particularly his own novels, which I
I
couldn't help to notice.
agree that it can be like a bit annoying when craft books and like in his lecture they reference movies all the time, but I also understand why they do it. Is very often because you're more likely to have seen this movie and this movie that is like a really big blockbuster than you are to have perhaps read some of the book examples he gives. I'm like, I've never heard of this before. So
I
it
heard about
helps.
a lot of them, so I was like, wow, am I not well read? Because I haven't read them. I just heard about them. Like, do I have approximate knowledge of a lot of good things? Cool, 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 cool. Um, yeah, and just generally, I thought, the production value, the production quality is good, the sound is good. Think they had some issues because some episodes are lacking, particularly the guest lecturers. Like there was one I couldn't
Yeah.
find specifically, but the stuff with him is really good. Um, so yeah, I just generally I think it's a cool thing. I think it's well worth watching. It is so many hours, 10 plus hours of content.
You could skip the Q&As if you wanted to, and you could skip the Q&As in the sessions as well if you wanted to. You would still have a pretty solid, good base of
Ah,
knowledge.
yeah. I just
So
felt like,
yeah.
in the spirit of reviewing it, I'd
Yes,
watch it
no.
all.
Just because you said it's quite a few hours for anyone who's like, I've not watched this and I want to,
People
but
here watch,
it's
Critical
many
Role. They can
hours.
handle 10 hours of Brandon Sanderson. It's fine.
Mm. I do enjoy
Um,
that everyone at the moment is talking about this idea of personal curriculum and people are doing their own, courses for themselves to teach themselves new things and better themselves. And I'm like, this is our version. This is nice to we've been doing this craft book series for so long and I love joining every single one of them, but this one is an actual university course. So there's something extra special about it. I don't know.
yeah, and I think it falls in the line of like how the story grid talks about editing. I feel Brandon Sanderson talked
Yeah.
about specifically character, plot, and world building, which is like the big pillars of a story.
Yes.
So I like if you could go to college and like have one semester with this and one semester with a story grid, that's your education, baby.
Yeah.
You don't need anything else. But though, I don't, I don't think this works for everyone, but I think it works for the way mine and yours' brains, particularly, is wired.
Yes, I agree. It is warm.
Wendy says, see, I would get struck by making them pretty, but I could put my handwritten notes into a program and make them pretty in post, I suppose. That also sounds like a lot of work, Wendy. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Definitely the highest Kickstarter ever. The 2021 had a guest speaker for short stories, which I remember being good. Her name is Marion
Oh.
something, I think. And I also watched that, and she was really good. And she talks about nesting subplots, which I thought was a really cool concept. So do recommend checking that one particularly from the 2020 lecture.
I'll give it a go because I
Um,
haven't watched that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I guess let's. The way I'm structuring this, since it's not really a book and we can't really do chapters and chapters, and doing individual episodes would just be a lot of work.
No. Yeah.
I've just kind of gathered some overarching
He technically
premises.
has some chapters, which is plot theory, characters, world building, and
Yeah,
publishing.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But yeah.
But like I've gathered some core elements to his philosophies, question mark, is that what we're calling it? And I thought we could just talk about them and go through them in order. And
Yeah.
if people want to pick out particular episodes and watch out of his thingamajig, I've linked the playlist to his college lecture class below in the box. Definitely check that out if you're interested. I've also linked Malin's profile. Check that out, though I think all 5 members currently present are a huge fan of
Already
you
know
already,
it.
Malin. Um, I've also seen a lot of Reddit posts, blogs, stuff like that break down his lectures. So there's definitely more content out there to watch about these lectures if you're so inclined. And we're adding to it. And I think, let's see, skipping these because these are the final questions. Bloop. Um, I think we're just going to dive into it and talk about the starting episode, the starting point, which is specifically his philosophy of professional writing, which had a statement that kind of, they had one statement that was just like, oh my God, please, that is the most beautiful thing a straight man has ever said. And also one thing he said that kind of was like, oh my God, I'm never going to do this again. Kill me now. Bad thing first, he said that your first 5 books are crap, which I was like, oh no.
I did put in one of my call outs when he said, if you haven't finished at least 3 novels, your job is not to sell books. Your job is to write books.
Yes,
Which
and I've finished
is a good
exactly one. So
you have
oopsie-daisy
started
me.
others.
I've
Technically, you
started
have.
other, but I haven't written 3 novels. I wouldn't say I've written three
But
novels.
I think he's obviously putting a number on something that generally means more like practice, 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 practice until you feel like you're somewhere where you could actually sell. But
Sure. I was just like, ugh. Because I would. This was in the middle of me. Because I watched this over the summer. This was in the middle of me, just like, should I get an editor for this book? Should I not? Should I just like shelve it and start the next one? Do I want to publish this debut novel? Is this gonna be my debut novel? Is this it, or is this just a pile of turds? And hearing that, I was like, oh, it's just a pile of turds. Uh, so that was kind of devastating. Do fanfic
I
novel
also,
count? That's what I need to know, lol. I don't think he had any kind of preference to it. Just novel is a novel.
yeah, I don't think it matters, but fanfic tend to be posted straight after being written. And I do think he's talking about your job is to write books, revise them a ton, learn your process. So if you've published your fan fictions immediately without ever revising them, I don't think that counts. Just in the sense of you also need to learn the revision process.
When he says, yeah, that part also made me feel a little depressed. Yes, the nesting. This is in relation to the short stories that,
Yeah.
was her name Marion? I
I
think
don't know who the guest was.
it was a guest lecturer in his 2021 about short stories, and she talked about nesting, and it made a lot of sense in my brain. Um, so yeah, just the first 5 books sucks, and your job is to write books. That was kind of like, but I want to publish. I want to publish now. So that was that. But the beautiful thing is that you know, kind of lifted my spirit was, the product of your writing time is yourself. You are the artwork, which I was like,
This time you spend writing will make you grow as a person. Yes.
absolutely stunning, stunning diva. I
I
love
love
that. That is a beautiful sentiment, and also made me feel a lot better because I've spent a lot of time writing, even if I haven't finished a book. Well, I finished the cowboy book, but even if I haven't finished all the novels I ever started,
you
I
did
am the
learn through that
artwork.
process. Yeah, and you did learn through that process as well. I think that's the whole point, is like the more you practice it, the more you learn, right?
Yeah, which I think was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And also he says that his class or his lecture is from the point of view of someone trying to be a professional writer, which
Yeah.
I'm not. So Or
But
like,
he
I mean,
he
yeah,
does talk about this because he's like sort of a lot of the advice he gives in later parts especially are regarding your goal in this theory is to publish one novel a year, etc., right? Like he's saying, like, if your goal
yeah,
was to make a living out of this, but all of the first part is more about writing the story itself. So
yeah.
is I think it's just so that he can contextualize it as well and say, like, a lot of my advice is going to be more towards commercial writing, right? Like something you actually want to sell.
Yeah. When he says, I do revise them a lot, I don't post them until I'm done writing them, so I don't leave people hanging if I fail. But you don't have to do the same level of character introduction. Yeah, that is true.
True.
But you do have to think about story and elements and moving parts and all that. So
Then I
it's
think the
just
thing that you'd need to practice is if you work with a lot of world building and you want to introduce that, you tend to not really have to do that at all in fanfics. So that might be something you're like, oh, maybe that skill I need to like work on
I
more.
mean, yeah, but it's the same level where you don't have to do a huge amount of world building if you're at like, modern romance. Sure, there's world building, but
Yeah, but his lesson, I mean, his course is for SFF writers.
yeah, but you can have fantasy set in a modern world with like he
Yes,
talks
and
about
there's a whole chapter about it, but it's still something like, if anything, that's harder. I agree, because you have to do the research.
yeah, and he also says that, it's more scarier to write a book set in the real world because if you get it wrong, people will know.
Yes. And it's so funny because he does mention like horse lovers, and I remember reading about that being like one of the hardest things that like fantasy writers have to deal with is
Oh.
horse lovers are obsessed with the knowledge of everything that is detailed about how to ride horses.
Yeah, does that mean I have to have a horse lover to read my book? Because it's a cowboy book, so it's just going to be horses. Though my mom is a horse lover, and I grew up around horses, so
Oh,
I
you
am
can ask her direct questions.
somewhat,
Yeah.
somewhat knowledge, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's a story for another time.
Mm.
Um, yeah, that's so true. And I also think people don't really come to fan fiction, though a lot of people do, though. Like, oh, this character would never do that. You're getting them all wrong. People
That's
do
true.
love to complain, both the real
Uh,
world and the horses. Yeah.
Fan fiction has a little bit more of a rule of like you're not really meant to criticize work. Like it's a gift to the community. Enjoy it. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah.
He also talks about, in his philosophy of professional writing, about the concept of skill versus, oh my God, aspirations. And like your aspirations to be a writer will be far increase your skills for your first books, which is why he wants you to write 3 books before you do anything, because, he wants you to push through that skill versus aspiration thing. And he talks about all the usual things, chef versus cook, which is just another word for like gardener and architect or wherever George Martin calls it, or like a plotter or a pantser, and like it's all part of the same circus to me at least. Um, and he also talks about how people can be a better editor than a writer or a better writer than an editor, and like your
Yeah.
strengths, and like this is why you should write a couple of books and kind of get it out of your system because you need to figure out what type of writer you are before you can do this professionally. So it does make a lot of sense. A book once said the MC demounted his horse, and I was like, "Excuse me, I'm not even a horse girl." What isn't? Don't you demount a horse?
What is the actual word? No, I'm not gonna know.
I mean, jumped out of the saddle, I guess, but
Yeah.
oh,
Dismount.
dismount.
That makes
Of
sense.
course. I was like, what is the difference? But yeah, good
It's
call, Wendy.
yeah.
But anyway, I did really enjoy this first class, and he was just, talking about the philosophy of professional writing
I
and what
did
that
have
means.
2 more call outs that I wrote from that first class. The first one was survivorship bias. We're most likely to listen to someone who was successful, even if that success was random, which is such a good little nugget of wisdom to remind yourself of when you start comparing yourself to someone who's getting published after like trying one time and querying to one agent and then suddenly gets a deal, like those people are a lot on places like TikTok, etc., and you hear a lot of the success stories. So it was a good reminder for me, especially because I was thinking about these things when I was watching that series. And the second one I really liked was ideas are cheap. The ability to take ideas and make them great is what's hard. And I also like that because it's a reminder, like a lot of the time when people are saying like, oh, I've got the greatest concept and everything, I'm not a concept girly. A lot of my stories aren't super interesting
Same.
high concept, so it's
Same.
always scary when you think, is that what I'm supposed to be like trying to publish? And then in reality, I like this version of his that says ideas are very cheap and it's what you make out of them that matters. I like that.
Yeah, that also makes sense. Um, I also no. Oh, my
So,
thought. It vanished. I was gonna say that I also don't compare myself because I'm like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people in our business,
mm,
um, or like in our, space are trying to be professional writers. And I feel one of the reasons I kind of like find you so inspiring is because we have the same goal. Like, we want to write one time a week, and then we want to work as our mortal jobs for 4 days a week. And it's
yeah,
not, we don't want to make a living out of writing, even though that would be really cool. But I don't think I could just do that, just me as a person.
I
But a
believe,
hobby that makes money,
yeah,
absolutely.
I would love to go part time and have my other part time be writing. That would be an
Yeah,
ideal world. But
yeah. And I just find that really inspiring. So I don't really find myself comparing, to, for example, like Wallace or Katie that had these amazing books and stories and, want
I
to make this their
wouldn't
lives.
either. I wouldn't either. But when I would be like, okay, now I'm querying. A lot of the stuff you find online about querying is the people who are super successful super quickly, and
Yes, for
you tend
sure.
to then think, am I shit? Is my story shit? Like that's all you can think, right? So it's a good reminder to say like
It
you're
is a
gonna
good
hear a lot
reminder,
more.
absolutely.
You're just gonna hear they're gonna shout the loudest, right? These are gonna be the successful
Yeah.
people.
And
You're not
also
gonna.
people are not going to go online and like most people won't go online and like, oof, it's been 3 years in the career trenches, going to try again with this
Yeah,
book. Like people I can
and you
say
do
that.
some people do it, but you don't
Some
find
people
them
do, yeah.
immediately. And so it's a
Yeah, yeah,
good
yeah.
reminder that the balance is like there's a bias of information there for sure.
For sure, for sure, for sure. Um, and I think that covers most of like the introductionary episode. It was a really strong start to the series, and I felt like the first episode and the last episode were nice bookends to the lectures.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I also, yeah, just want to say this again: the product of your writing time is yourself. You are the artwork, and I think that's
It's
comforting.
it's a really nice sentiment. I like it.
Yeah. And now we're getting into the actual course stuff of the lecture, which is he has three big chapters, I guess, which is plot, characters, and then world building.
Yeah.
And I haven't really divided them up in those chapters. I've just taken out uh, individual like little tidbits that he talked about. If you want to jump in with something else, Malin, feel free. This is a conversation. We're talking. Also, want to preface this by saying that I like this is not a critique. This is not a review. This
Mm.
is just like what me and Malin, got from this course. So if you disagree with any of our opinions, too bad. But also don't.
Because the point is literally, I mean, it's a good course for I would almost say like beginners if you want to like jump into any sort of writing advice in general about it covers so many topics, but some are going to be more interesting to us than others. And especially since
Yeah.
we have read so many other craft books before, I think. So to me, the most interesting one was probably world building. That was the one I was waiting for because he is so known for that. That
And it
that was
was like by far the best like few episodes.
yeah.
Like no tea, no shade, but the character stuff, I was like, what the fuck?
I don't remember
Um,
thinking what the fuck, but I was just like, it's the stuff I know, or
yeah,
like
I
sort
mean,
of
my takeaway will definitely be the world building and like the philosophies, and
yeah.
he had some bits to say about the publishing industry in the end. I was like, those will probably stick more than. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. Um, he talked about first plot theory, and one of his huge like kind of learning sentences, but that sounds very culty. But one of his huge points was, you know, the concept of a promise, progress, payoff, which I
Yeah.
think is just a very nice way to say, a story arc, basically.
Yes. What I
And I,
didn't like was that he called things. plot with a capital P and little p plot. And I was like, that is confusing as fuck. Call them something else, please.
I understood what we were saying, but I do agree with you. Also, one of the things I enjoyed a lot back in the philosophy. Sorry, just jumping back now. But he said that these are not rules; these are guidelines. And
Yeah.
one of our favorite things that we talk about every time a book mentions is that a lot of people give prescriptive advice, but he's like, this worked for me, and if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, throw it away.
He's
No
very good
biggie.
at saying, like, take what works for you out of any writing advice because
Yeah.
you will get contradictory writing advice all the time. So clearly, not
Yeah,
everything.
and he's very like open-minded, not open-minded, that's not the word, but he's very like, you know,
Like,
if an
honest.
advice doesn't work for you, it's not an advice
Yeah.
kind of thing. And I love that because a lot of things work for me and a lot of things don't. And
Agreed.
I think it's frustrating when, for example, people like Lisa Cron was like, this is the only way to do it. If you don't do it, you're dumb.
God, yeah. I think that immediately sets me off against her. I was like, I would have liked your book better if you hadn't said that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I did like how open he was to alternative ways to write. Yeah, I also
Mhm.
think Brandon Sanderson kind of works the way we work and are wired in the sense of you know
He's a
having a
writer
sort of
first.
structure to
Yeah.
his story.
And he's also like, I think, at least like me, he prefers writing to revising. And it's rare. I feel like most advice I read from authors tend to be they're the other way around. They tend to be revisers first, writers second. And it's rare to find the other way around. So I was glad for once to be like an example of someone successful who prefers the writing, the first draft part.
I think I just like whatever part I'm not in the most. I think when I draft, I'm
Yes.
like, oh my God,
Gotcha.
revision is where it's at. And
Yeah.
when I revise, I'm like, oh my God,
Also,
drafting is where it's at.
and also when you start at the beginning of a new one, I tend to really like it at first. So I'm just like, this is
Yeah.
great. And then slowly I'm like, I hate this. Why am I doing this?
Yes. And these, like, what's that quote? And like, sand through an hourglass, these are the days of our lives or something. But yeah, he's very like, yeah, there's different kinds of people and different kind of writers, and there's no wrong or right way to write a book. The
Yeah.
only mistake you can do is not to write. And I thought
Yeah.
that was gorgeous. Anyway, Wendy says, I'd like to know how open it was to alternate ways to write. Yes, me too, Stig. When the idea are new and flowing, that's the best part. But
Yeah.
also, when you don't have to think and can just revise, that's also the best part. We don't see all the work beforehand. We often only see the moment when someone wins and gets published. Um, Demount would be like a mounted fish or a deer head or a gun when the thing itself is mounted and you demount it. If you are mounted on the thing, you are dismount. Okay,
I
thank you for the
thought I,
clarification.
I didn't even expect demount to exist. I thought that would be unmount or something like unmount something, but that probably doesn't exist either. I don't know.
I think you can unmount in World of Warcraft. You can unmount a mount, which is like a riding creature.
Oh, okay.
When the ideas are new and flowing, when you are revising and you have an epiphany, also the best part. Oh, I really literally had a shower thought this morning and it solved like 95% of the problems I had with my mystery. And it was like, it was so simple, and yet why did it take me 2 years to think of it? But I just, moments like that, I live for it. And then I have
Love
to
it.
write it down so it doesn't leave my head.
This is
But
also why I try to do a walk per day because that's usually when I get like solutions to some of my problems.
I love that. But yeah, he's talking about promise, progress, payoff, and that stories are built up out of these three things, and like that the story is the intersection of all these things, and that's where you find the conflict.
Mm.
And setting, plot, and characters should all exist to facilitate some sort of conflict. And then he talks about big plot and little p plot. So Malin, what is a big p plot?
So, plot with a capital P is when someone says, "What is your book about?" That's the sentence you boil it down to. And little p plot is what happens chapter by chapter to keep the readers engaged. That's what I wrote.
That's exactly also what I wrote.
See, we're good note takers.
We are very. I also have this one which I thought was funny. I don't know, like small little problem, solve it. Small little problem, solve it. Building towards a big problem that you solve.
I don't think I've got that note.
I mean, this is what I wrote before the summer, so I don't know the context of this, but it does sound like story progression to me. I just thought it was funny. what he talks about facilitating conflict. A thing needs to happen. Your character needs to do it, and something needs to stop them. And yeah,
And then he does talk about, I did quite like the part where he talks about all the different promises you got to make, because there's things such as like tone promise, etc., that
yeah,
immediately
yeah.
think about. Because when you think of promise, I automatically only think of the promise of your premise, right? Like the book blurb and what is expected therefore of the book. And I don't think of things like the tone, etc. So I like that he broke it down in a little bit more detail.
Yeah. He does talk about that. And the tone promise is the way to tell the reader that this is the kind of story you're getting into, and this is the vibe. And I thought that was good. And
Character promise, yeah.
yeah, I thought it was a really solid lecture. He also talks about progress. You absolutely control the progress of your story in greater length than you think. He talks a lot about signposting, and it was so kind of funny. And I noticed this overall with his lecture, that all of his anecdotes are the same as in the 2020 lecture, because he started talking about some kind of Stormlight Archive anecdote. I was like, I definitely heard this in the first lecture. You're just
It was the
literally
same
almost
one.
verbatim. I went back and checked. He tells the exact same anecdote to prove his point about progress. And like, you making this promise that he talks about to the reader, you have to follow up on it. And if you don't follow up on it, the reader will feel cheated. And you can intentionally set up a promise that you're going to break. But if the reader doesn't pick up on the fact that you're breaking the promise, like if a character says, "Oh, I'm so happy, when I get out of this, I'm gonna do this. This is my big dream," and then they die, that's kind of an expectation of the promise, because oh, the author is promising me that this character is gonna die, because why are they talking about the dreams? Because they're not gonna live the dreams, because
Yeah.
characters never do. So that's kind of a way to make a promise. But if you're like setting up this promise of this character is gonna, you know, do this thing when the book is done or when the task is done in the story, and then they actually do it, that can also make the reader feel cheated, because they're like, wait, so they actually get to live the dream? What the fuck? And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just thought it did a really,
I did
really
think he
good.
had some good examples for it. Yeah.
I didn't write down the examples.
Sometimes I wrote some of the examples, but in a more concise manner than how he explained
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah. And it talks about like different plots. So like the mystery plot, the relationship
Yeah.
plot, the action versus relationship plot scene, A
Which
plot versus B plot.
I did
Uh,
know really like that he made the brilliant comparison, which is absolutely accurate, of buddy cops movies are the same as romance movies and they have the same relationship plot, which I was like, that's true. That is so accurate.
Facts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was really good. And I just really like the way he laid it out, because it's very, like, as I said, it's very not technical. Is that the word I'm looking for? He's very like, this is
Hands
like,
on,
look at the
I think.
material.
Yeah.
And I respond to that.
I
And then he
do
talks about, yeah,
I was gonna say I do think he used Lord of the Rings a little bit too much as an example, is my only
I
like
think he uses the exact right amount of time, because I'm currently reading Lord of the Rings. So
I just felt like sometimes I was like thinking of other examples myself, and I was like, you could have switched it up. You could
maybe
keep
he
one
hadn't
or
read it.
two. I don't know. Not even just read, but like movies and other things that was like, oh, it's exactly like this. So yeah, I thought that was funny.
Yeah, and then it talks about payoff, which goes a little bit into the promise thing we were talking about earlier, where he's talking about giving people a surprising yet inevitable fulfillment of your promise. So like promising the reader a toy car, but then making them want a toy plane and then giving them the toy plane. Like, that's the way you can set up a promise and have the payoff be the opposite of the promise, but then, working the reader into wanting this thing that you're giving them over the course of the novel.
It
Uh,
is in the payoffs. I think this is why I said I think he uses Lord of the Rings too many times, because he talked about the exact same example twice in two separate lessons, which is the Gandalf promise of look for me on the morning of the fifth day. And then you forget about it. And then he does come back on the morning of the fifth day, right? And he uses that example twice for two separate things. I was like, you can come up with other examples, surely.
and I'm not mad about it.
I liked it the first time. Second time I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and then you should always have a promise, and you should all have progress, and you should all have always have payoff within a chapter, within a scene, within an act, and within a story. And I thought he did a really good job in like explaining that and kind of logically unraveling it to the viewer.
Yeah.
Um, he also did another episode on plot, which is called Story Structure, where he just talked about a lot of different story structures and ways to kind of develop your story. I'm not going to talk about them because we have talked about them before.
It's
He talks about,
literally all of the
yeah,
ones that we've seen in other craft books. He talks about the hero's journey, etc.
story circle, yes, no, yes, but no, and try fail cycle, 3x structure, save the cat. So if you're looking for an episode on story structure, his episode number 3, plot theory, story structure, might be your thing. I'm not
But
gonna.
I actually think it's probably one of the episodes I would recommend the least, just because he doesn't delve deep into them, and I think he assumes people know.
It's
Like,
more an overview. Yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely more an
exactly.
overview. And it
Yeah,
does talk a little bit about like the plot is there to provide conflict. The conflict and the struggle are the story. The sequence of events is not. So like the action is not the story, but the conflict and the struggle is the story, which I think is an interesting distinction. And you might not think about it that way as a
yeah.
new or intermediate writer. Um, and then he talks about again the lower case p plots, and then he goes into all this story stuff.
In in that episode, I think the main thing I think was quite interesting is very similar to the author of the story grid. I forgot his name. Sort of
Sean
has
Coyne.
Yes, he has a similar model idea where at the very end of that lecture, Brendan talks about structure model, and he says, looking at subgenres, look at all the books that have a specific kind of subgenre that you're interested in writing in and analyze it. And he's like, you research all of these, you know the points that have to be there, etc. And it's very similar to what John Collins says as well, where he's like, essentially, if you know you're going to write this specifically, like I can't remember which one of them gives the example of detective novels with a cat, which are apparently a thing. That is
Oh,
a very specific subgenre, then you research all of them, you read all of them, you check what they do, and then you
it's like
analyze.
me reading all the cowboy book these years.
But that's true because you essentially make notes in your head of, okay, so all of them have this thing that happens at this point, and that's what's satisfying about it. And you make your own model from that you create yourself, which I think is a great idea.
It's a beautiful sentiment. When you're revising and you have an epiphany, also the best part, the Air Force pilot with his girl back home, lol. I don't know what that's in relation to, but no, but it's good to use a lot of varying examples because they aren't always so obvious on the surface. Right, to know the reader expectations. Yeah, definitely talking about tropes and the reader expectations. Because he is talking about commercial fiction and not literary fiction.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I just thought the plot segments were really strong. I think you get a good overview of like plot, how to craft a plot, how to rework a plot that you've already made, but you're not sure of the structure. Um, oh, the pilot was about the promise this character will die. Oh, right. Gotcha. Um, and he talked about plot structure, and thought he made a good job.
Yeah.
Next up is the characters, which is kind of, I didn't really get it. I think that's the case. It's not bad, but I just didn't get it. And particularly one concept, like I get the concept, but I'm just like, I'm struggling to wrap my mind around the applicability into my own like process. And that is his concept of thinking about characters as sliding scales. That is a typo in there. Can I fix that without? Sure. Let's just do that. I can look at that for like a good 10 minutes in
Yeah,
good
you need to
conscience. There you go. Think of characters as sliding scales. And
between
particularly,
proactive, relatable, and capable.
yeah, and like a character should never be all three. And um,
It's
like
like when I design things and clients are like, can we have it cheap and good quality and quickly? It's like, no, you can have 2 out of 3.
yes, very much that. Like, yeah, very much that. He talks about these three aspects: proactivity, relatability, and capability, as Malin said. And if one of them is high, one should be moderately low and one growing and learning. So you can be proactive and you can be a little bit relatable, but you can't be capable.
You need to be
Well,
learning how to become
you need
capable.
to learning. Yes, you can
Yeah.
learn how to be capable. Or you can be very relatable, but you're not very proactive and you're kind of learning to be capable. Like think of these three things as the sliding scales and then adjust your characters and when one of them goes up, maybe one of them should go down. And he talks about this whole scenario of sliding scales, and I'm just like, I don't understand. Like I don't like I understand the words and the meaning, but I don't know. I don't think about characters as that.
I think you can probably retroactively analyze your own characters and see whether they fit sort of like that model or not. But I also think it's mostly to do with the main character and the villain. I don't really think that it matters that much
Yes, yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
other characters, to be fair. And it's literally, he's basically saying, like, you need your character to have a character arc on one of these, essentially.
Essentially, yeah. And then he talks about another concept with his characters. Oh, hello, Andy. Welcome, welcome. We're talking about the Brandon Sanderson Writing Lecture 2025. If you watched it, let us know. And if you haven't, just forever hold your tongue, I guess. But also let us know. And there's another concept. So you have the three things: the proactivity, capability, and the relatability. And then he talks about the triad of character identity, which I thought was a lot more digestible or whatever.
Is
Um,
that in the follow-up lecture or in the same
in the
lesson?
follow-up lecture, in
Okay.
like the character things.
Right, because I'm following everything you're saying through my notes, so that's
Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is in the customize your character section, and he talks
got it.
about the triad of character identity, which is motivation, personality, and values. And then he had some good questions to ask about your main character, which I kind of went through and did with my own character, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
But he talks about like how motivation, personality, and value comes together to make your character identity. And motivation is what does a character want, the personality is how does a character express what they want, and the values is what principle guides the character. And I
Oh,
thought it was really good.
I wrote, what is the character willing to do to get what they want as values?
Oh, I might be paraphrasing a little bit.
Okay. I'm like, wait, we
Uh,
had the same exact notes before.
I mean, yes, but he did like, what is the principle that guides the character? Well, like basically what influences making their motivations and decisions and expressing themselves. And like
Yeah.
also he had a little segment about villains for this bit, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
And iconic characters, which I thought was also an interesting concept because you can have iconic
that's just like
characters.
the way I thought about it. It was just talking about static characters there.
Yes, but
Yeah,
I do like that there were a lot of questions about these. So I took notes every single time people asked questions about this because I feel like things like a mentor character can be an iconic character, things like that. So they're often useful. I find that I have quite a few static characters
okay, 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 okay.
on the sides.
I do like a good static mentor, that is true. And then killing them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was a really good way of like he had a bunch of questions for each, identity or triad. And like overall questions to ask about your characters, like the backstory. What does this character want to know? What failure will they never repeat? What does the character want? Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Not blah blah blah. It was really good questions, but there's a lot of questions, and I don't want to give it all away. If you want to know more, watch episode 6, customize your character.
Yeah.
And he did talk about iconic characters too, which is like the characters like James Bond, the Babysitters Club, the Hardy Boys, Mary Poppins, characters that doesn't necessarily change, but they change the world around them, which I guess is a mentor character. So that does make sense.
Not always,
Um,
but yeah, sometimes, yeah.
yeah, often is a mentor character. Because I feel like the mentor character often dies, so
Yeah.
there's not really that room for the evolvement. But yeah, that's his two segments on character, which I thought was the least useful for me. I did love the
I think
The
it's
the
just that we've
plot.
read quite a few books that had more about characters, so this felt like a good reminder or perhaps a good starter point if you don't know much about characters, but I feel like we've read other works that were a little bit deeper into character
For sure.
development.
I mean, we read K. Mylan's creating character arcs, which I think would be, to me, the magnus opus of character creation. Like, if you're
Yeah,
not going to read one book about character creation, read K. Mylan's, creating character arcs.
agreed.
Um, for sure. Um, and then he talks about my favorite thing, which was the world building. I thought he does it
Mm,
so well. And I've only gathered a few talking points for the world building, like literally two of them. So if you have anything else, Malin, just shoot in. Um,
okay.
but oh shoot, also do we want to do a sprint or we just want to yap? Let's just yap,
We
Corridor.
can just yap. I mean, that means I'll eat quicker, so I'm happy with that.
Okay, always a win. The so-called flat character arc, yeah, because I've seen so many people understand that. Yeah.
Can I just
Um,
check, is my connection bad or is your connection bad right now? Because your video is lagging for me.
oh,
The
you're not
audio
lagging
is
for
fine.
me.
Am I lagging or are you lagging? Is what I'm asking.
You're not lagging to me. You're a little blurry on the camera, but
Okay.
could
Well,
be me,
cool it.
Jesus. I haven't gotten any like, warnings about
So it
you got
might be
very
me.
blurry, Malin. Phew.
Yeah. But I'm on my main
I mean, oh
Wi-Fi.
no. But yeah, I haven't seen any lag to you, Malin.
Okay.
You've been here the whole time.
Then I think it must be me. It's me, Jesus.
Is it me, Jesus?
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, then there's not gonna be any sprints today, which I think is a better format for maybe a writer's talk or writer's
Yeah.
chat.
Yeah.
Because I do want to go back and edit out the sprints out of our previous ones, so they're like a little more digestibles. But not today. Today we're talking about Sanderson's writing lectures, specifically his world building segment, which I recommend everyone watching, especially two concepts, which I think is like at least one of them is very well known, I think, which is the Sanderson's laws of magic, parentheses,
Yes.
trademark. Uh, and he kind of makes fun of it himself, like how these laws are named after him, but these are his laws, and he says that these are not rigid rules but flexible guidelines that he adhere to in all his books, not necessarily just his fantasy ones.
Yeah.
But
But
he
he
has
does.
three laws, which I think is the perfect amount of laws.
Yeah, I like 3. It's a good number.
It's a good number. And I thought we could just go through them and talk about them. Um, do you have any overarching things to say before we dive into the specific laws?
I do like that in his introduction, he makes a point that you want world building to work in service of the narrative and the story and not the other way around. And I think he also talks about it
Absolutely.
in the philosophy of writing as well. He mentions a little bit quickly, I think the same thing where he basically says like, if your book is really strong in world building, but not these other points, then it's an encyclopedia and that's not what you want to write.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those were good um, good advice. One of the things he talked about in his characters, a quote that I just thought was funny and I wanted to share was, "Make Sauron sexy and hope it works." That was one of his character ideas,
Yes.
suggestions to oh my god, yeah, one of the ideas in his character creation was, if
Yeah.
all else fail, make the villain sexy and hope it works. And I thought it was really like on the nose. Um, Also, I don't for was that in there was one point where he talked about epigraphs and prologues and how reader will skip them, and there was a collective gasp in the class, and I thought that was so funny. I don't know if you caught that.
I don't remember that.
I forget if it was in one of the later ones, maybe.
Maybe.
I think it was in the world building one, like because someone was asking about epigraphs and prologues, and it was like proportion of readers skip these. You can have them for people who want to deep read, but
I
don't put any
think
vital information in them.
he does have a point where he says like, yeah, if you write these, just be aware that, because I
Yeah,
remember him saying, following up by saying, and there's also a percentage of your readers that will read the ending before the beginning of your book and they will like the book better for it, and you have to be okay
yeah.
with that.
Yeah, but there was a collective gasp that I just thought was so funny in this episode. Um, People were like, and there was like the murmur among the audience, like the students. It was like, oh my
People will
god,
skip. Yeah.
people will skip. I have a prologue, so you can't fault it anymore. But
Just
Lord knows
don't
I've been
call
on the
it prologue.
barricades
Just
proclaiming, I just call it Colorado 1880. That's the
like that.
title.
Yeah, I like that. Or I love a prologue that doesn't say prologue at the start, but then afterwards you see chapter one, you're like, wait a minute, that was a prologue.
I was bamboozled.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. Anyway, back to the actual course. He talks about three laws specifically. The first law, which is that understanding equals magic, um, which I thought was a fun way. He talks a lot about soft magic systems versus hard magic systems. I think Sanderson generally is well known for his hard magic systems. I read Mistborn, and it is very like, you know, very Dua Lipa new rules, like one, don't pick up the phone, you're burning metal. And two, like it's very like bam 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 bam.
Yeah.
And do you have a preference to soft versus hard magic, Malin?
I think I never really thought about it before his lecture, and I was waiting for his lecture to be like, what am I actually working with? And I think I'm somewhere on the spectrum, probably. I do
Well, he
like,
does say that,
yeah,
it is a spectrum with soft and hard, and
yeah.
magic exists on the spectrum.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't think I'm all one way or the other. I feel like when you call it hard magic system, it sounds scarier and makes me feel like I don't have my shit together and I don't have a proper science behind the rules of what works, what doesn't, etc. And that scares
the rules
me.
of survival.
Yeah, the rules of survival. It's not magic, thankfully. But on the other hand, I feel like I'm
Well,
probably
science fiction is basically just a hard magic system, isn't that something that says?
in um the Space Princess Project. Yes, they basically have a sort of magic system. In Rules of Survival, I guess you could call the horror aspect of things, like the zombie stuff, that's a magic system, but that's the only magic system there is. The rest
Yeah,
is technically fake science.
big science.
Fake science.
Let's talk about, how soft magic, maintaining a sense of wonder, just the vibes, creating narrative tension through uncertainty, and using magic to complicate rather than solve problems. Not always, but it can be a great use. And for hard magic, he says, have clear, understandable rules, often rooted in real world science, and allows a more strategic and satisfying magical problem solving. Which I thought was a nice recap of the first law that, understanding equals magic. Like the more you know about the magic systems, the more understanding, like, yeah, the more you
Yeah.
understand the difference, the easier it is for you to craft the magic. And also there was one where he's like, what was it? Something, before you sit down and create the magic system, you should think about the intention of it and not just
Yeah.
like, I want to have elemental magic and it's going to be this and this and this. And he talks about like tying in, the themes and all that,
Yeah.
and the broader implications. And I thought that was a good. Um, so yeah, his first law, understanding equals magic. And then the second law is that, limitation is greater than power, which I thought was an interesting one.
Yeah. That the flaws are
Basically,
more interesting, yeah, than the magic.
yeah, that the type of magical limitations, he listed a bunch of them, like what could a limitation look like. He talked about,
The
the
cost of magic.
constraint,
Yeah.
the cost, the weakness, stuff like that. And I thought that was interesting.
I do like as well that he mentions one of the limitations being moral limitation, and that can also recoup with your theme if you do work within a theme, which I thought was quite a nice.
Which was so fun because that's what I'm doing for my comic books. I'm like, wait, this makes sense.
Love that.
And I thought that was so fun. He talks about, that, as you said, limitations to a magic system is more interesting than the power, or like,
Yeah.
it. He talks about like what am I trying to say? That putting a limitation on a magic system will enhance your story in several ways. He talks about forcing your characters to work harder and, increasing the narrative tension and, adding depth to the world building. He talks a lot about that. Like
Yeah.
does the whole iceberg model, where the top of the iceberg is what the readers see,
But
but you should know.
that's in
Yeah,
another lecture though.
I mean, yes, but like pulling it all back,
Yes.
that's the depth to the world building and the depth to your magic system. Like, it's better to have a few things in the magic, but make them really, really like impact your world instead of just having 73 different spells and they do absolutely nothing,
Yeah.
basically.
And um I do like how he tries to tie in everything a lot with characters as well, because I feel like often when you think of SFF, you think you don't automatically think that way, but perhaps more plot rather than characters first. And I like that in this example, when he talks about the limitations and the flows of magic, he says like your character are going to be more interesting in what they can't or won't let themselves do than in what they can and will do, which is something I hadn't thought about in that way. So I quite like that little nugget of wisdom.
Yeah, and I definitely do like his, as you say, he is focused on, again, kind of like the whole world building thing, where the world building should serve the story and the story shouldn't serve,
Yeah,
or like the world, like the magic should serve the story shouldn't exist for the magic, if that makes sense.
agreed. Yeah.
We're joined by CB. Hello, hello, hello. We're an hour into talking about Brandon Sanderson's writing lecture. We're currently talking about the world building, which is the last big plot point. So I don't know how much longer this will be. When he says, I swear I'm not intentionally dominating chat, and I swear I'm not intentionally ignoring you. It's just we have a lot of ground to cover. Um, I think it kind of is like hard magic because it's usually technology we don't have yet or science we haven't discovered. So about roots of survival and zombies.
Yeah,
Um,
although I guess then in that sense, I'm thinking of it in the same way. He talks about things you don't have to explain at some point in one of the lectures about world building, and things that will be assumed by the people who are readers of sci-fi. For instance, you don't really have to explain FTL if, that's not something you have to delve deeper into, but you could if it's relevant to your story. Like, I think in Space Princess Project, for instance, the reason they can travel really quickly is because of a specific thing that they have to mine from specific planets, and that is part of the currency. So that does become important to my world building. But in other places, I don't feel like it's important to world building. So I think
yeah,
that's why I think of it as like there's not really a world building part that I have to build. Like, it's not really a magic system to me in my head, because I'm thinking this is something that's established as conventions of the genre, I guess.
yeah, and I think it goes into the thing where it's like you should make a magic system that kind of serves your characters and your story,
Yeah.
and like you shouldn't make all these things that you'll never talk about, like kind of the world building disease aspect of it. Like you should focus on the things that you actually do, like FTL or wormholes or whatever is important to your story. Like focus on those things and make it like really deep and
Yeah.
impactful in your story, and not just like how Star Trek will throw out science mumbo jumbo, and like it means nothing. And yeah, I thought that was interesting. And that kind of goes into his third law, which is that you should expand upon a magic system and don't add. Like, don't create increasingly complex magic systems without the depth,
Yeah.
the world building disease. And he talked a lot about like strategies for increasing magical depth, which I thought was really interesting as someone who's going to dive into a Viking vampire magic story at some point. I'm definitely going to have to revisit this.
Yeah.
Maybe just my notes. I don't know if I'll watch the episode, but my notes were extensive. So, but it
Yes,
talks
same.
about three three strategies to kind of increase the depth of your magic system: extrapolation, interconnect, and streamline. So, with extrapolation, you should explore the broader implications of your magical abilities. Like what happens when a black goo is loosened on a planet with a craft crew on it, Malin? What happens? I'll tell you what, shit goes down.
Shit does go down. Yeah, shit hits the fan.
You should examine how like this black goo would impact society, economic, cultural, blah blah blah, all these things. Like think about how the magic affects. Like don't have it just be a cool trick, but think about how it affects the world, basically.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that's a really interesting way to because I often do this thing where I'll do something because it's cool, not necessarily because it serves the story. You can do both, surely, but it takes work. He talks about interconnection. You should tie the magical system to your broader themes. So, connect powers thematically. Gandalf the White, for example, he's a good guy. Saruman the Grey, spoiler alert, he's a bad guy. And, you should ensure that the magical elements serve the story's core narrative, um, which is just what we're trying to say. Well, what I'm trying to say, I guess. And then he's talking about streamline, so consolidate magical elements, combine existing magical concepts, and avoid unnecessary complexity. Complexity. Complexity? No,
Complexity.
complexity.
I think you
Yeah,
had it
sorry.
the first time. Yes.
Yeah. And that kind of covers the 3 laws of Sanderson's laws of magic, which I think are just general enough to be universal.
Yeah. And he does mention as well that he learned some of these by making mistakes in the first place. So I do like that. This is
Yeah.
like, the credentials of the person teaching you these is pretty extensive and that he actually knows what he's doing with these. So
Yeah. Quite successful. But also like that he's like, I don't know why I'm successful, guys. Could be skill, could be luck, could be 90 to 10%. Either way, we never know. I also thought that was fun.
yeah.
Um, Wendy says, I had a moment in a fantasy I was working on where I realized that if this magic was this prevalent, then would they have doorknobs? And then not having doorknobs would actually be a problem in the story. Hate when that happens.
Well, actually, that's really relevant to sci-fi because they also don't have doorknobs in sci-fi. Everything just whooshes open and close all the fucking time. So I have to
I
think
love
about
that.
that. Because I was like, wait a minute. If it whooshes open every time they get near it, that's going to be a problem if they're being attacked by zombies. I need to figure out a way how they can block the doors. So yeah,
Oh yeah, maybe you could just, I don't know. You
I
probably
have
figure it
it.
out.
They have like a manual, like you have to stomp on a manual, like lock thing, so that they actually stay closed.
Do you call
Um,
it something cool and sci-fi? Like it's a gyro
no,
lock.
the manual locking system, I think I called it.
Dang. Where's the
But I
creativity?
do have that for other things. Like at some point, I was like, oh, I guess she's going to use this gel like substance that's going to help with her wound. What should I call it? A medipatch, of course. And
Love a
stuff.
good medipatch.
Love it. Love the sci fi jargon.
CV says, I'm trying not to constrain myself with book 1 magic mechanics. My MC is not human, so his magic gonna work differently than humans, so slightly different magic systems.
I like
That's
that.
a fun aspect. Like, how does different characters react to the same magic? That could be fun.
Yes. And
Or they
that
can
is
set the
one of his,
station into manual mode.
yeah. And that is literally one of his points as well, being like, it's more interesting to build things that bring contrast to one another. So, like, his example is like religion, I think, where he's like, in world building, you might have a religion, you might be like, I'll build another religion. Or could it be an offset of the first one that, diverge at some point in history? And that's why it's interesting because then you have a contrast between the two. So I think it's quite fun to see how the magic could be used differently depending on whether the person is human or another species.
Absolutely. Um, and yeah, that's on Sanderson's Lots of Magic trademark. Anything you want to add to this particular topic?
Are you encompassing in there just the Laws of Magic lesson or also the world building one that comes after?
This is just the Laws of Magic lesson because I have the last point on the actual world building.
Then I think the only other highlight that I got that we may not have touched on is where he says at some point to seed pieces of the magic system that the characters can use as tools. But I think that's more towards how not to like give a bunch of exposition all at once, right? So it was sort of like how you can
Yeah.
make that work better. It was within the second law, I
Info
think.
dumping bad.
Yeah, info dumping bad, but he's basically like saying you can put one step into soft magic, things that we don't understand yet, and then characters will put it together piece by piece, and they learn the science behind it, and then becomes hard magic. So sometimes you have systems that
I
are
love that. Yeah,
softer side, but
I
then
do love
become
that
harder. Yeah,
as a concept generally.
yeah, I like that.
Um, I also like that. Seeds, not pebbles, as we learn on this channel. And then the last lesson in his world building one is the 3 components to world building. Um, And he starts this by asking the age-old question, what should come first, the world, the characters, or the plot? What do you think, Malin?
I think I agree with him about design your world building to fit your story rather than the other way around. Because if anything, I mean, I guess we've all learned that lesson from the misadventures of Audra Winter on TikTok. But
You
uh,
love her,
I
personal friend of
just
the channel.
I think it's so funny because it's such a
I need
uh,
to find my computer charger, but keep going. It's just around the corner.
yeah. No, I just think it's a good example of literally what he's explaining, which is like you don't want to have an encyclopedia. And I was like, oh, look at that. Someone's
Yeah.
done it the wrong way around. But yeah, I
I
agree
mean,
with him in that sense.
not to harp on the fucking, Utter Winter, but the fact that they don't take notes, that's kind of what baffles me the most.
Yes. Yeah.
But we don't have to get into that. That's neither here nor there.
No, I know.
Um,
But I do love getting into
yeah.
the neither near
I
here
do
nor
know you love the tea to drama. Oh, what is this emoji? Uh, I don't know. I'm on the trouble account. Let's do this. Sure, why not?
there. Why not?
Dark and Secret Magic by Walter Kinney. Perfect October read coming up. But yeah, absolutely. He talks about the three components, and he says, that the answer to what comes first, the hen or the egg or the world or the characters or the plot kind of varies. But it's not about the density of the ideas. Like a lot of ideas, as you said when we went into this, ideas are a dime a dozen, but it's what you do with them that counts. And he
Yeah.
does talk about that in terms of his world building, where he's like, um, you know, it's about how the ideas influence each other. That's the interesting part about world building, and not necessarily, how many different complex magic systems you have.
Yeah.
And
And
that generally the world building should be strategic.
but I also like that he gave several examples of his own stories that have come from different places, and that he was saying, for instance, for Mistborn, he had a story that sounded like it was sort of concept first. What if the villain won? That he then turned into a setting, which that is world building. But then he had another like some of his ideas came from world building first, and then some of his ideas came from service to the story, so story first. And like that, he had several examples, and that he wasn't like, "There's only one way to do this."
Oh wow.
We've got a tarot card reader, by the way.
Sounds like a bot. I'm gonna
Sounds
give
like
you one more chance and then you're out.
I
Um,
don't like that there's a bot called Tarot Killer. Can someone please get rid of it?
I can probably get rid of it. Delete comment. Maybe the door sends heat signatures. There you go.
I have
Zombie
that for
stone.
their individual doors, but I think it's got to be set up in that way. And so that is called a bio lock, by the way.
The bio lock. Wait, that's don't take notes with Otterwinder. She's my worst nightmare and my guilty pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one and the same. Um, personal friends of the channel. Personal friend of the internet, I guess, at this point. And it does talk about the three, three components of world building. Yeah, sometimes I get 3 and 3. Like it goes too fast in my brain, and I just I misspeak. And the 3 components of world building is Malin.
Physical setting, cultural setting, and magic setting. That's the ones you're talking about, right? Or are you talking about settings, characters, plot?
No, I'm talking about physical setting, cultural setting, magic systems, indeed.
Because I literally have 3 pillars: settings, characters, plot, and then straight after I've got the 3 portions of world building: physical setting, cultural setting, magic setting.
Oh. I mean, what is don't take notes? I mean, Otter Winters, she famously, I guess, infamously at this point, don't take notes.
She's still publishing the same bad story, it sounds like, by not listening to people critiquing it, essentially. Basically, she's ignoring the fact that you do need some beta readers at some point.
Yeah.
And
I think it's that Otter will not take notes, as in critique. Yeah, that's what we meant. But back to Sanderson. Physical setting includes geography, climate and weather, flora and fauna, cosmology. What is the cosmology of your book, Malin?
God, we don't want to know about that. That's too
I
complex.
want to know. Are you going to have a
I
star
haven't built
chart
it.
at the front? Can I
Yeah.
track the voyage?
No, I could do that with Space Princess Project because that would make sense with that one. With this one, it doesn't make sense. It's literally they're going to that one planet where there's zombies and that's it. Like there's no point really in having a whole fucking star system built around it. And I'm not, unlike, you know, the majority of people who love SFF, I am not a map girly, unfortunately. I have to say that I do not go back to check the trip on the map.
I do. I love a map. I live for a map. I
I look
laugh
at it,
for a
I go,
map.
oh,
I love a
nice
map.
map, and then I never go back to it.
Every time a city is mentioned in this text, I go, ooh, I wonder what that is. Scroll to the front, trace through the map, and be like, oh, yeah, that looks about, 2 days journey from,
Yeah,
Globville. Love
I
that.
don't
And
do
then I go
that.
back
I
to the
don't do that at
story.
all.
I love that. I feel like, it's the most satisfying thing. So
I
what you're
don't.
saying is that when I make a map for my book, you won't check it.
I will do exactly the same thing as I've done with every other book that has a map. I'll be like, oh, nice map, and then I'll never get to it again.
uh, yeah. And I love a good map. Oh, dang. But, no star chart for, rules of survival, I guess.
It's not really. I will include the map of the settlement because that's really important. That literally saved me in so many ways while writing it
Thanks,
because
Anna's husband.
it's. I constantly use it to be like, where are they going next? Oh yeah, they're going there. Wait, that doesn't make sense because it needs to take longer. Maybe they're going around because of this. And like, I constantly use it. So I will include that map because that's really good.
I love that. I want to have a map of everything though. I want a map of the town, a map of the city, a map of the state, a map
There's,
of the homestead, but I can't.
I mean, for your book, you mean? Because I don't have a
For
town
my
or
book, yeah.
yeah. It was just like mine is a
So like I
settlement.
made maps for all of these things because like you, I need to like I like to watch and be like, oh, if they're standing here by the entrance,
But yeah,
are they going left or right?
if your characters are moving in all of these spaces, then I understand if you want this sort of like accuracy and to know what's happening. But
I
I
mean, I
really,
made the maps.
yeah.
I want to
But are
put them
you
in front of a
using
book,
them?
but it's not going to be, it's not going to be any point to it. Maybe the state map. I'll have that because I have an AU world. But I have made maps of like the final battle, the initial city, the big city.
Final Battle is
And
pretty good.
yeah, I do love a good final battle map. Um, yeah. So physical setting is one of the three components to the world building. The second one is the cultural setting. Um, what is the culture of your world? Like, how did that inspire you, Malin?
I think for Rules of Survival, a lot of the cultural setting is going to be the tech and things like that. So, um, I don't really have anything with religion or food lore or anything of the sort. I will have to dig deeper into law and government at some point because that dictates a lot. I think it's perhaps more similar to what you see happening in the latest of the Alien franchise, Alien Earth, where they dive a little bit deeper into big corporations becoming entity, geographically, so that you have like the city of Prodigy that belongs to the company Prodigy and like corporations that dictate everything. I think that's more similar to my
I love
cultural.
that.
Yeah.
The
It's
city of
not as
IKEA.
it's not as intense. It's not as intense and bad, but it's probably like, a few years before that happens. Like it's going that way type of setting.
I love that. I love that. Um, yeah, including laws and government, as we talked about, religion and belief systems, technology and innovation, language and dialects, social norms and traditions,
Fashion
um,
is also in there.
and fashion. Where was that? Have I not written that down?
In cultural setting.
Oh, I must have skipped over it. Fashion. Fashion.
I mean,
That's not how you spell that.
I've got the whole table if you want. I'll send it to you.
No, 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 no. I can have my own table, or you can send it. I love either way.
This is all I wrote while he was writing it on the board.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, beautiful, stunning, gorgeous diva. Bloop. And then the last one is the magic system. As we talked about, hard versus soft, magical influence on society, and limitation and costs. And those are kind of the main things he works out in his own world building. Sort of kind of how he divvies it up, I guess. And then you talked earlier about, planting the seed of the magic system instead of info dumping. And he also goes into this concept called the pyramid of abstraction, where you should balance the abstract ideas, like, for example, black goo science or this magic system, and kind of explain the sensory feeling of it instead of be like, the black goo bubbled, but like, what does it smell like? Kind of bring the
Yeah.
reader to the experience, and instead of trying to explain the experience, basically. And then it talks a bunch about viewpoints and
Yeah, which I was like,
tense.
I don't need all of that.
Yeah,
That's
I just
probably
took some
boring.
short notes, and then I'm like, okay, moving on.
Oh, and also one concept we didn't talk about that I liked was world builder's disease, which I think
Oh, we talked about that
did we? I
in
mean,
third law.
oh, I've got it. Oh, I guess that's why I didn't think we talked about it because I've got it right after the physical and cultural settings. That's when he talked about world builder's disease some more.
Oh, we talked a little bit about it during the third law to expand on that. So don't create
Yeah,
increasingly complex magic systems without depth, also known as world builder disease.
yeah, the
It's sort of
fact
like
that
that, the whole
you spend
iceberg thing.
so long deciding what your world building is going to be that you don't actually start writing. Yeah.
Yeah, his big thing was like world building should enhance rather than distract from the storytelling, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's not world builder's disease. The world builder's disease he talked about in that section was saying when you don't write, it's when you're not even
Yeah, yeah,
writing.
yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm just generally talking about this world building
Yeah.
section. But yeah, the world builder disease, like, if it stops you from writing the book, bad.
Yes.
And you should focus on interwoven ideas, elements of setting, culture, and magic should support the character arcs, the plot progression. Avoid info dumping, use character experience and sensory details to reveal the world organically, and pick key areas to develop. Instead of fleshing out every aspect, invest in details that directly impact the narrative. Like, for example, Black Goo Science, or in my case, like the whole law military system because the world is under attack. So, dig
Yes.
deep, not wide, basically, is his world building philosophy, I guess. Is that what we're
Yeah,
calling
it's
it?
this whole hollow iceberg theory. Because I had heard of the iceberg, but I hadn't heard of the hollow one before.
Yeah. I have like reverse world building disease. What is that? To explain CB, is there no world? Is it white room syndrome? We missed a bunch of comments. We're going to go through that before we wrap up. Door handle comments, auto winter comments. I need to design my map, but I don't want to be limited by it in the future. I'm very much in the school of it's more like a guideline on an actual rule. If I need to move a hallway in the future, 0 calories. Don't ask
I
about that.
added an entire room when I reached Act 2B, I think, because I was like, oh, fuck, I actually really need them to function with this room. And then I added it and I was like, okay, I'll make a note that when I revise Act 2A, there's this extra room. So I don't
Love
think it
that.
limits you if you allow yourself to revise it.
Yeah, nothing is set in stone, especially not until publication. And even then, you can revise your own text, and the published book would be the published book. But Wendy says they're struggling with that too, even though I'm not writing fantasy, but I am planning to write a series in the same town. I worry over whether each decision is going to bite me later. I mean, there's always a solution.
Yeah.
Share notes. Share notes, says Wendy. Exactly. Map countries and for future books. I love that. Okay. Then that wraps up our segment on the world building, I think. He also, and I'm not going to dive too much into this because I'm really just here for the craft, but he talked a
That'd
bit
be
about
interesting.
publishing.
Yeah, I took notes because of the fact that I was taking notes of everything, but I was just like, I don't think this is something I need to look at now.
Yeah. Anything particular to
Uh,
note?
let me. He goes through the whole history of publishing and
Which
how
I kind of enjoyed as like an educational journey, but not necessarily something I'm taking notes for.
I did enjoy it, but I was also like, why have I decided to take notes of this? So, um,
Um,
and he
the,
does talk a bit about like traditional publishing versus indie publishing. What's it good for? And I like that he explains the whole pipeline of what happens when you do decide to go down the traditional publishing route and like who's going to look at what and percentages and
yeah,
stuff. I just thought it was very detailed in a way that I was like, I don't know if you need to know that until you do have an agent and you start being on submission and all that.
I mean, his whole shtick was, there's no right way to publish, but knowing
Yeah,
how each model works really gives you the power to choose what's best for you, which I enjoyed.
yeah,
And also, there was a section where we talked about from manuscript to bookshelf, a traditionally published book typically takes 18 to 24 months. Woo,
yeah.
that is so long.
And also, I think the only other bit, because I did write down a bunch of things on like, like agents, what they do, publishing contracts, blah, blah, blah. I did take notes about the publishing contracts part, thinking one day perhaps this will be interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Where he's like, definitely keep your rights to this and this and that. Like just some general advice about the rights you need to keep. And
I
then
mean,
he
I'm
does,
self-publishing, so I have all the rights.
yeah. But then he does briefly touch on pitching your novel, and I felt like that was all a bit like you can get all of that information somewhere else in more details. So I didn't think that those lessons about publishing were that interesting.
But I do think it belonged in the class in the big screen.
Yeah,
Are these the lectures on YouTube? Yeah, I'll link them below. There's a whole playlist, 16 videos, including the question and answers.
yeah,
But this is the lectures, his writing class 2025 version that he did over the course of the summer or the spring, I guess, that he did, and is worth checking out. And he talked a little bit, yeah, as you said, about the machinery that is publishing, the history, like the money talk,
yeah,
blah blah blah. And I think it belongs in a writing class that he like the type of writing class that he has. I think it belongs, but I think specifically for me and in the vein of talking about it like the craft on a YouTube video
yeah,
or like on a live chat, I was like just took some quick notes.
yeah,
Um, one of the things I also noted that we haven't talked about is a couple of quotes. Publishing is slow, it's weird, but if you can make it work for you, it's one of the most rewarding things you will ever do, which I thought was such a sweet quote. And then the magnus opus of this
yeah.
stream, which is not necessarily like there were two nice bookend quotes. I didn't put this in a quote. I'm going to put it in a quote just so I can put it up on the screen. But you texted me earlier today, and you were like, "Oh my God, this quote, how cool!" Or
I
like,
was just
"Oh,"
like, this is so emotional.
but it's kind of not funny, but like, because we watched this class and it kind of felt like we were there, and to
Yeah,
have him talk directly to us with this quote, it was like, even I
it's
got a little teary-eyed
I
knowing it was
watched
coming.
every single episode from beginning to end, including the web episodes with Q&As, and I think in total it's 16 of
16
entire,
lessons, yeah.
yeah. And like to finish it off the way he does, it just felt like we were students there. And
It was very
his,
sweet.
yeah, I thought it was very sweet.
Let me just see that I've spelt this word sure correctly. And it did like wrap up with a Q&A session where you could ask any question about any topic, and he did answer that. But he also did a little like goodbye section, which had a quote that I thought was just so sweet. If you finish your novel, you are among the elite, and you are my colleague. Which I guess we're both colleagues with Brandon Sanderson now. Is that who
Love
we
it.
are?
Love it.
And yeah, he talks a little bit about publishing statistics and, but no matter what you end up doing with your book, finishing your novel, you are among the elite. And I thought that was
Yeah.
a kind of such a sweet bookend to the first quote, which was, the product
He
of your writing time is yourself. You are the artwork.
I like that he took the time to take those 5 minutes at the very end to be like, here's like a little bookend for you guys. And he starts it up by saying, I've told you this entire course to act like I'm going to treat you like you're professionals trying to make a living of writing. For now, drop that. You're not anymore. And I'm now gonna finish on these words. And he says, like, how hard it is, how unlikely it can be, but also how it's not impossible to be published, to become a professional. I like that he goes through the spectrum of it and that he's basically saying, like, it's achievable, even if it's very, very, very hard. And it sort of feels like I don't know. I don't want to say bittersweet because I think it's very sweet that he says that, but there's a little bit of it that's also like him saying like, you got to make sure you write for more than just the idea of becoming a professional. You got to make sure you write because it's good for you and you enjoy it. And he does say himself he had to make that decision at some point where he was like, I've written 12 books and none of them have sold. Should I continue doing this? Yes, because it's good for me and I like what it does for me. So I
Yeah.
like the whole little section was really sweet. And the fact that he ended it on that sentence felt like, wow, that's like a proper little speech, you know, that's so nice.
It did feel like Theoden rallying the armies of Rohan into
Yeah.
battle. And I think this is a perfect note to kind of end this little chat on. You know, world building, plot, characters, whatever you do, if you finish your novel, you're among the elite and you
Yes.
are a colleague. And I think that's a beautiful little, yeah, bookend. Like those two quotes that I shared, the product of your writing time is yourself, you are the artwork. And if you finish your novel, you are among the elite and you are my colleague. Those are my two big like
Favorite.
bookends to
Yeah.
this. This would like these are the sentences that I will, print out, clip on my board, whatever. And I think, they were really, really cute.
Yes.
I like that too. The League of Book Finishers,
And
which
if
is a
you
very exclusive club.
and if you go on that last video of his, that last lecture, and you go down the comments, it's the one quote people have like repeated again and again and again, saying like, "Oh my god, I'm crying," and just people love
Yeah.
that.
I mean, he cooked with that one, I will
Yeah.
admit. Okay, time for the, analysis. Malin, who is this lecture for?
Anyone who wants to write a book and or anyone who's a fan of Brendan Sanderson, apparently, because even if you don't want to write a book, some people were listening to it, as you said.
A lot of the comments on YouTube are like, "Oh my god, I don't write books, but I just here for the vibes," and I'm like,
Yeah,
I love that.
exactly.
But I'm
Exactly.
also the same. Like, I enjoy watching hobbies of things that I have no interest in partaking in, but I just enjoy watching. Do you see yourself using this lecture in your own process?
100%. Specifically, the world building stuff, I think.
Agreed. I thought it was a great lecture, and it's free, which is insane. Like the fact that this is free,
Yeah.
everything you need to know about, the basics of writing, you can find in this course. Uh, and it's free on God's internet, and I think that you should absolutely take advantage of that.
Yes.
And make your own little, like, as you said initially, like in these time of making your curriculum slaps.
Yes.
Um, Roll the die, as
Oh.
as we all do here. If you don't familiar with the die concept in Norway, media is or anything is reviewed in media with a die, so 1 to 6, where 6 is the best and 1 is the worst. And that's how we rate things in Norway. And I think it's so funny because I got a reel the other day and was like, this explains it perfectly, sending this to Malin. Because you've been questioning it like, out of 6? What do you
No,
mean?
I think it's because the first time you mentioned it, I questioned it because I was like, what is that? I was like, out of 5, I get it because that's half of 10, so I understand. But out of 6, I've not heard this before.
I just think it was so funny. I'm like, ah, this little piece of Norwegian culture.
So funny.
But yeah, roll the die, Malin. What die do you give the
I
Brandon
mean,
Sanderson Writing Lecture 2025?
it's a 5, I think, for me. Very close to a 6. Like, it's like on the edge. You know, the die is like cocked
But not
because
quite. Can
not
I
quite.
ask what keeps it from rolling over?
I do think he yaps a lot, and there were some lessons I was like, I'm gonna put you on 1.5 speed. And there's a lot. I think we both agree on the problem with the questions during the lecture that sometimes felt like people were asking questions for the sake of asking a question rather than because they genuinely wanted to know the answer and just to have that interaction with Brenda Sanderson on his videos that are going
Never.
to be published or something. I think that annoyed me a little bit. So just the overall lecture because of that perhaps goes a tiny bit down on the, on the
I
die.
think I agree. It's a 5 on the die.
What is
Um,
your reasoning?
a lot of the same. I think because I'm not so entrenched in the Brandison universe, I think I'm missing a lot of the, not missing, but I'm like indifferent to a lot of the references and a lot of
Mm,
the anecdotes. But I also think that's a huge part of his course. Like
yeah,
his this public figure giving this lecture, and if he was just lecturing and not giving it like any personal anecdotes or sharing stories or like, I think that would also be a five for me. So it's a game he can't win simply. And I
yeah,
also think there shouldn't be any live questions during the lecture, though I understand why they did it. uh, I
yeah.
also appreciate, because some of the questions were valid. So I felt like some of the questions were well answered. Well, they were all well answered. They were just not all warranted. But I do think that it's slogged down because each lesson is about an hour and 15 minutes. So
And he yaps a lot at the beginning of every single lesson, so you almost never get everything you really want of the end of the lesson. So I have like some notes where sometimes the last point there's like two bullets in there and that's it. And it's just a bit frustrating where you're like, you could have spent less time on these idiotic questions.
yeah, fair.
So I think that's why,
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, a five from me and a five from Malin. So peer reviewed because we're both colleagues.
we're colleagues.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's it for today.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Amazing.
An hour and a half of yapping.
I know.
We've been talking about Brandon Sanderson's writing lecture, the 2025 editions. They're on YouTube. I've linked them below in the comments if you want to check them out. There's 16 videos. You can cherry pick your topics, or you can do as me and Malin, watch them all. You can also subscribe to Malin, which is linked below, which is something you absolutely should do because Malin is amazing, and I think all 8 viewers in any case is subscribed to
Probably.
Malin.
Or they already
Uh,
know me and they've already decided if they want to be subscribed or not.
well, if they aren't, then I'm side eyeing them. I'm gonna go. Oh, I didn't mean to start that. I'm gonna go and watch his world building ones. Yeah, those were my favorites. Absolutely, the
Same.
laws of magic and the roots of world building. Definitely
Yes.
check that out. The
Agreed.
League of Book Finishers. That is us. I'm gonna give that a star, Wendy. Lovely. Thank you so much. This will probably be the last writer chat for a hot minute, though I've been saying that for a year, I feel like, but
I mean, I bet
I
you'll
keep
come up
coming
with
back.
some new ones in the new
I
year.
mean, there's already more craft books that I want to read, but my main focus, at least until next summer, maybe I'll start a new season. I guess we're calling it a season. Maybe I'll start a new season next fall when I've done like the whole big editing my book thing. But I want to take some time to actually work on the craft now and not just read about it.
Yeah.
I don't want to go. I don't want to get world builder's disease, if you know what I mean, Malin.
Yeah.
Um, thank you. I always get more out of things when I hear other people's perspectives or takeaways. Happy to provide. If there's anything me and Malin likes, it's yapping about
Yeah.
craft to
Giving
each
our
other.
opinion, especially if it's unwarranted.
It's
Yes.
always unwarranted, but yeah. And I just think it's so fun to get to spend time with like one of my favorite things when we were in Edinburgh was you and me sitting down on a cafe, and you had like such a specific pinpoint niche question, something like, oh yeah, the third scene of the all is lost moment, blah 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 blah, and it was just like knew exactly what you meant and gave an answer, and I was just like,
Yes.
what if anyone listened to us now, like
What
what
a
the fuck is
fantastic
this?
experience. I think it's one of my favorite things about meeting writer friends in real life and being able to do
uh,
writing sessions live because it's just like, wow, we're actually working on our books and yapping about book specific nerd stuff. Like,
I love it. It is,
love it.
yeah, it is such a blessing to have writer friends to get to experience someone's art. I think it's a beautiful thing, and I love it. Thank you. You're welcome, Wallace. Next month will be a regular streaming month. I'll be here every Tuesday. I'll pop up the sign up sheet. If
Well,
anyone wants to join, send me a message and I'll drop you a link to the sheet.
and I'm sure it'll be
Um,
there quite a few Tuesdays.
I love that for you, Malin, and I love that for me. Um, yeah. Um, Happy October tomorrow. That's a
Yeah.
trouble stream that I'm hosting.
I'm gonna
Um,
go make my dinner and then I'm gonna try and write because I have like a quarter of a scene left to finish my act 2B, and I
you
really
can
want to
do
finish it in
it
September.
by
I
the end of the
don't,
month.
I don't want to finish it in October, so I'm gonna do that after.
Yeah. Pissed. You all should join the Storyteller's Heart this October. I
it's at
think I
the
was
end.
away that weekend.
Is it not at the end of the month or something?
Yeah, the last weekend, I think it was.
Usually is. Okay.
Um, but yeah, I'll be here next week. I'll be here tomorrow, in fact. And tomorrow I'm starting a ramp up challenge for my own writing process because September has been so slow. Busy, incredibly surplus, surplus.
I don't know what you're trying to say here.
Me neither. It's been incredibly busy, so I haven't gotten all the writing done that I hoped to at the beginning of the month. So I'm going to try and do a little reset tomorrow, and I'm going to start with a wrap up challenge because that worked wonders last time and it made me finish my novel. So that's the plan tomorrow. I am preparing to import my reverse outline into Scrivener so I can write the second draft. I'm so proud of you, Wendy.
Nice. Nice.
And with that, the 2023,
Five.
4, and 5 season of Writers Chat has come to an end. As always, thank you so much for being an incredible, dear, close personal friend, Malin. I love you so much. Thank you for being at most of these. And as always,
Having me at most of
see you
these.
next Tuesday.
Bye.